Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise to second reading of the bill that I have brought to the House. Bill 202 is titled the Education, Class Size and Composition Amendment Act. If I had been able to add a subtitle, it would have been Good Information Begets Good Decisions. Bill 202 is a straightforward ask of this government. It's a bill that is focused on addressing concerns about increasing class sizes and a lack of transparency. There are three pieces to this bill. The first is to return the public class size reporting that was long the standard before 2019, when the UCP made fuzzy what once was very clear. Now, the number of kids in a class doesn't paint the full picture. So, in addition to class size reporting, we are also asking to see the complexity in our classrooms. The foundation of this bill is that good information begets good decisions. So the second piece is to ask the ministry to start making some good decisions, to set standards in our classrooms, to determine how many teachers, EAs, support staff are needed, to prioritize student learning and student success. And finally, the third piece is to ensure that we continue to make good decisions going forward. The last Commission on Learning Excellence in Alberta was assembled in 2003, and we are asking the government to assemble this group again now, and then every 10 years. This group of experts will make recommendations not just on class size and composition, but also on the impacts of technology, changing demographics, and formulas for determining sufficient funding of education programs. Good information begets good decisions. Over the last week, we have heard the minister throw around many numbers. The number of teachers they're hoping to hire, the number of EAs, the number of school projects moving forward. So it is clear, to me at least, that the ministry has no issue with tracking numbers and reporting those numbers back to the public. The core of this bill is asking for just that. Do that same tallying of numbers and report back to the public on how many kids are in a classroom, how many English language learners need support, how many neurodiverse kiddos would benefit from an EA to help smooth the dozens of little transitions that happen during your average school day. Those numbers and that information should be made transparent to the public because they provide context. Now, the minister had no problem taking to social media in August to report that budget was made available for 2,600 new staff expected to be hired for the current school year. He had no problem standing in this House last week to report that 3,000 new support staff, including teachers, will be hired into our classrooms. Now, it was interesting how that number has grown, and one does wonder if by the end of the school year we'll be told that 4,000 or even 5,000 new positions are being filled. But really what the minister failed to do was provide context. Increasing funding to our education system by 5% over 3 years, it might sound good to the casual listener, and certainly an additional $820 million over those 3 years, well, that sounds like an awful lot of money. The question is it enough? 2,600 or 3,000 or whatever number the minister chooses to throw at us, it may sound like a lot of staff, but is it enough? Is it keeping pace with growth in our schools? Is the budget increase informed by the needs of local decision makers? In a province where some school divisions are experiencing 5% growth year over year, is 5% over 3 years enough? When we are asking this government to increase transparency, we are simply looking for that context. Class sizes can help shine a light on where growth is happening, where new physical classroom space is needed. And we need to see more than that. In order to know that the increasing complexity in classrooms is being addressed, it is critical that we know the class composition piece as well. Who else are in the room? How many teachers? How many EAs? What other types of professionals are needed to best support our kids' learning needs? Good information begets good decisions. Those of us with children in the public education system, and especially those of us who have had the privilege of time to be physically present to support our schools and classrooms, we know that classroom complexity. We have seen that teacher with 30 students, 18 of whom have a coding of some type. A single teacher in front of a class of 30 kids, half of whom are English language learners, 2 who are spinning like tops because they can't regulate, and 1 who has completely retreated into their shell as a coping mechanism. I'd say these kids are falling through the cracks, but when more than half the classroom lacks the support they need, it's not so much a crack as it is a chasm. The minister has said that it's up to school boards, or school divisions, whatever they're called these days, to make these decisions about where funding and support needs to go. I can agree with the minister on this, and after witnessing the big government approach the UCP has taken on the healthcare file, it is a relief to hear that this ministry won't be attempting to consolidate control of our education system inside the ministry or the Premier's office. Locally elected school board representatives know their populations. They know the changing demographics in their communities, and they are focused on doing everything they can to support the learning needs of their students in their communities, because there is no mandate for school boards to negotiate the sharing of resources across school divisions. No, that is the job of the ministry. And just as growth isn't happening equitably across the province, neither is classroom complexity. So while the good folks at Peace River School Division will know best whether resources are directed to Dixonville School or École Springfield or TA Norris, it is the ministry that should know how those schools' needs compare to Catherine Nichols Gun in Calgary or St. Paul in Lethbridge or West Haven Elementary in Edson. Now, back in July, the Education Minister received a mandate letter, and this bill dovetails quite nicely with a few of the outcomes laid out in that letter. I was heartened to see that the letter directs the minister to evaluate and, if needed, expand supports for qualified professionals such as speech-language pathologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and psychologists. Another section of the mandate letter directs investment in improving testing and educational supports for children with complex needs, including children with autism. Yet another directs implementing additional EAs in classrooms to address the increasing complexity of learning needs. Teachers have been shouting from the rooftops about classroom complexity for years now. And while this is clearly not the top priority for this ministry, it is at least something that they have been directed to address. This bill isn't about limits or caps. It's about making sure we have the full picture and are fully informed before taking steps to address the complex challenges faced in almost every classroom across this province. The students learning in our classrooms today are Alberta's future leaders. They deserve a quality education, and Albertans expect nothing less. Good information begets good decisions. I hope the minister and his colleagues make the good decision to support this bill. Thank you.